To many American audiences, it felt like Tim Roth appeared out of nowhere in Reservoir Dogs. One day he seemed to be an unfamiliar face, and the next, he was in the middle of one of the most talked about independent films of the decade. But there are two things many people didn't realize. First, Tim Roth isn't American at all. Second, by the time Reservoir Dogs arrived, he had already spent nearly 10 years building an acting career thousands of miles away in London. The bigger question is this: how did Tim Roth spend 4 decades becoming one of the most fascinating actors of his generation without ever turning into a conventional movie star? The answer starts in South London. Timothy Simon Roth was born in Dulwich, South London in 1961. He grew up in a household filled with creativity and strong opinions. His mother, Anne, was a painter and teacher, while his father, Ernie, worked as a journalist and painter. Ernie was also a World War II veteran and, for a period of time, a member of the British Communist Party. Art and politics were part of everyday life in the Roth household, but life outside home was different. When he attended school in Brixton, being comfortable and artistic didn't exactly make fitting in easier. He found himself being picked on, and eventually he developed a way to protect himself. He taught himself a convincing Cockney accent. It was an early lesson in performance. Long before acting became his profession, he had already learned how to sound like somebody else in order to survive. In fact, he became so good at changing his voice that even decades later, many people still assume he is American. Interestingly, acting wasn't even his original dream. He wanted to become a sculptor and enrolled at Camberwell College of Art, but eventually he dropped out and drifted toward acting almost by accident. Then at just 21 years old, he landed his first major role. He played a white power skinhead in the television film Made in Britain, directed by Alan Clark. It was an uncompromising and difficult project, and Roth's performance was genuinely unsettling. He brought an intensity that made audiences pay attention immediately. At the end of filming, Clark asked him what he wanted to do next. Roth simply replied, "Be an actor." Clark then asked him which directors he admired. Roth mentioned filmmaker Mike Leigh and his improvisational approach to storytelling. Remarkably, Clark picked up the phone right there and called Leigh, who happened to be casting at that moment. The timing changed everything. Roth went directly into Mike Leigh's Meantime, where he played a character who couldn't have been more different from the one in Made in Britain.
Well, I ain't. Funny, innit?
Eh?
B, C.
Never the fuck with me, alright?
Don't point, it's rude, don't you know that?
Instead of aggressive and intimidating, he became shy, awkward, and withdrawn. He starred alongside another young actor who would later become one of Britain's finest performers, Gary Oldman. Tim Roth later described this experience as his real drama school. Looking at those two performances side by side is fascinating. On the surface, they seem completely unrelated, yet both performances reveal something that would become one of Roth's greatest strengths.
Look at this. Watch closely.
He was only 23 years old. What's remarkable is that he never carefully planned this career. Acting simply kept happening to him. Throughout the rest of the 1980s, Roth worked with serious filmmakers on ambitious projects. He appeared in Peter Greenaway's The Cook, The Thief, His Wife and Her Lover, Robert Altman's Vincent and Theo, where he played Vincent van Gogh, and Tom Stoppard's Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead opposite Gary Oldman. The British press grouped these actors together and called them the Brit Pack, borrowing the idea from America's famous Brat Pack. Roth and Oldman certainly shared a similar restless energy, but there was one important difference. Oldman often vanished entirely into his characters. Roth, on the other hand, always allowed a small piece of himself to remain visible. It wasn't a weakness. It was simply a different style of acting. Eventually, he moved to Los Angeles. Then in 1991, he read a script by a first-time director named Quentin Tarantino. He later said the script had incredible energy and felt unlike anything else. His agents wanted him to play either Mr. Pink or Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs. Instead, Roth wanted the role of Mr. Orange. The part fascinated him because of its layers. He would be an English actor playing an American undercover police officer pretending to be a criminal.
He's barking at me. I mean, it's obvious. He's barking at me.
Ironically, he was so nervous about auditioning in front of Tarantino and Harvey Keitel that he avoided a formal audition entirely. Instead, he took Tarantino to a pub. By the end of the evening, after plenty of drinks, they had read through the entire script together. That is how Tim Roth got one of the defining roles of his career.
Thing. Motherfucker looks just like the Thing.
His performance in Reservoir Dogs is extraordinary. For most of the movie, he lies wounded on a warehouse floor, frightened, vulnerable, and struggling to survive. Yet somehow he becomes the emotional center of a film filled with men trying to appear tough and fearless. The filmmakers were so committed to realism that a paramedic remained on set to ensure his condition looked medically believable. Then came Pulp Fiction in 1994. 30 years later, the film still carries enormous cultural importance. Roth played Ringo, better known as Pumpkin, one half of the diner robbery duo alongside Amanda Plummer's Honey Bunny.
Everybody be cool, this is a robbery!
Any of you fucking pricks move!
Interestingly, it was Roth himself who suggested Plummer for the role because he wanted to work with her. This time, he abandoned the American accent and used his natural London voice. What people often forget is that Pumpkin and Honey Bunny frame the entire movie. Pulp Fiction begins with them planning a robbery, disappears into its famous nonlinear storytelling, and finally returns to their scene at the very end. Structurally, one of cinema's most celebrated films begins and ends in Tim Roth's hands. The following year, he went in an entirely different direction with Four Rooms. As a hotel bellhop enduring the worst New Year's Eve imaginable, he was loud, frantic, and full of nervous energy. It also demonstrated something important about his acting. The intensity people associate with Tim Roth isn't one trick. He can direct that energy toward danger, humor, anxiety, or chaos, and somehow it still feels completely natural. Then came Rob Roy in 1995's. As Archibald Cunningham, he delivered a performance so memorable that it earned him both a BAFTA Award and an Academy Award nomination. By the mid-1990s, Tim Roth occupied an unusual place in Hollywood. He was acclaimed, instantly recognizable, and fully capable of stealing scenes from actors with much larger names above the title. Yet he never became a traditional leading man. Perhaps that wasn't a limitation at all. Maybe starring roles simply weren't the most interesting part of his career. The second half of the decade brought even stranger choices. He sang in an American accent in Woody Allen's Everyone Says I Love You, appeared alongside Tupac Shakur in Gridlock'd, and starred in The Legend of 1900 as an extraordinary pianist who never leaves the ship where he was born. The film barely made an impression in America, but eventually developed a devoted following. Roth trained extensively to make the piano performances look authentic, and viewers still debate whether he actually played everything himself. None of these projects represented safe choices. In fact, they seemed designed to avoid creating a predictable image. Then in 1999, he directed his first and only feature film, The War Zone. Based on Alexander Stewart's novel, it explored deeply troubling family secrets and was handled with remarkable restraint and sensitivity. During the press tour, Roth publicly revealed for the first time that he had experienced abuse as a child from his paternal grandfather. Years later, in 2016, he disclosed that the same man had also harmed his own father, Ernie, when he was young.
It was the last conversation I had with my dad. We were in a pub and he asked me, he said, "Did my dad ever fuck with you?" And I went, "Yeah." And he went, "Yeah, me too."
It is impossible to ignore the weight of that history. Still, Roth kept moving forward. He played General Thade in Planet of the Apes, appeared in Michael Hanks' Funny Games, became Emil Blonsky in The Incredible Hulk, and even turned down the role of Severus Snape, which eventually went to Alan Rickman. Then came something completely different. In 2009, he starred in the television series Lie to Me. As deception expert Cal Lightman, he led the show for 3 seasons. Television suited him surprisingly well. For decades, he had entered films, disrupted everything around him, and disappeared. Television gave audiences time to sit with him and watch him more carefully. The last decade has been even more varied. He appeared in Quentin Tarantino's The Hateful Eight, returned in the 3rd season of Twin Peaks, starred in the British crime drama Tin Star, delivered a quiet and moving performance in Bergman Island, and rejoined the Marvel Universe in Shang-Chi and She-Hulk. Then came heartbreaking personal tragedy. In 2022, Roth and his wife, fashion designer Nikki Butler, lost their son Cormac to cancer. He was only 25 years old. The family described him as a wild and electric ball of energy. It was an unimaginable loss, and understandably, Roth has largely kept that pain private. Even so, the work has continued. He appeared in Tornado in 2025 and at age 64 portrayed John Beckett in Peaky Blinders, playing a Nazi agent hiding in plain sight as an ordinary man. When recently asked why he so often plays villains, Roth answered with typical humor. Fear of unemployment, mate. It sounds like a joke, but perhaps it also explains something important about him. More than 40 years into his career, he still behaves like someone who could lose everything tomorrow. Maybe that's the key to understanding Tim Roth. He was never the actor whose name alone sold the movie. He never completely disappeared into characters the way some performers do. Instead, there is always something unmistakably Tim Roth underneath the role: a watchful energy, a nervous edge, a feeling that something unpredictable could happen at any moment. Wildly individual, occasionally reckless, endlessly fascinating, and completely authentic. And perhaps that's why, after 4 decades, Tim Roth remains one of cinema's most interesting actors, even without ever becoming a conventional movie star.